And joining me now is Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Senator Graham, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for being here in person. It's great to see you. I do want to start with Pete Hegseth. He was just confirmed to be Defense Secretary by the narrowest margin in history. Senator McConnell voted no, and he said he wasn't convinced that Mr. Hegseth was ready to manage 3 million people and a budget of nearly $1 trillion. You, of course, voted yes, but Senator, do you share any of Senator McConnell's reservations about Pete Hegseth?
You know, what I do, I vote for almost everybody. I voted for Lloyd Austin, and I get a lot of crap on our side when I do that. But I think Pete will be taking the department in a new direction. He'll be more focused on warfighting. I think the Lloyd Austin's a nice man, but it was a tough 4 years. So I'll just leave it up to Senator McConnell to explain his vote. At the end of the day, I was okay. Now, all these accusations against him were disturbing, but they were never proven, and he did a really good job at the hearing, and that's what got me to yes.
All right, let's move on to President Trump's agenda, his mass deportation plans. He wants to deport the 11 million people who are here in this country illegally. You are proposing a $100 billion package, which by some estimates would deport about 1 million people. So, Senator, my question for you is, what happens? What is the plan for the remaining 10 million people who are here illegally?
I'm not so sure they're going to deport 11 million people. He said they're going to deport people who are part of gangs that are criminals. There's 1.4 million who've had their case fully adjudicated, and they're still here. There's about 680,000 convicted of serious crimes. But here's the question for the Republican Party. We talk about doing this, but we don't have the resources. We haven't given the Trump team the resources. Tom Homan, the border czar, said yesterday, without money from Congress, I can't do this. He needs to substantially hire more ICE agents. He needs to finish the wall and technology. He needs to go from 41,000 detention beds to 150,000 detention beds to make this work. So to my Republican colleagues, particularly in the House, as we fiddle, our immigration plans are hitting walls. We're not building walls, we're hitting walls. We need to give Tom Homan the money now to execute the plan that he's come up with. And without congressional funding, this is going to hit a wall.
I want to talk to you about the strategy in just a moment, but to follow up on something you said. I mean, President Trump said to me he wants to deport everyone who's here illegally, whether they have a criminal history or whether they don't, with the exception potentially of dreamers, those who were brought here as kids when they were children. But, Senator, are you saying that the plan is not to deport everyone who's here illegally?
I'll let them speak as to what their plans are. The public is actually with supporting criminal illegal immigrants. The public was supporting everybody that came in during Biden's 4 years. He wants to do something on DACA, but here's what I would tell our team. Without more money, Tom Homan is hitting a wall. So we need to do 2 bills in reconciliation. The first bill should be $100 billion for the border, $200 billion for national security. Put those points on the board, give Tom the tools he needs to execute a mass deportation strategy to deal with a mass illegal immigration problem created by Biden. Without new money, he cannot do this.
Let me ask you about President Trump's executive order that he signed on birthright citizenship, essentially trying to end birthright citizenship, which allows people who are born in this country to be citizens. It's enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Federal judge blocked that this week, put it on hold. Do you think the Supreme Court will side with President Trump on birthright citizenship?
I think there's a good chance. I introduced legislation to end birthright citizenship years ago. Canada, Mexico, and the United States are like 3 of the 20 economic powers in the country. There are 3 of us that do this, maybe Brazil. So it's a magnet for legal immigration. Here's what I learned yesterday. I didn't know. There were about 250,000 people born in this country to illegal immigrants and got the benefit of birthright citizenship. That's 7% of all the babies born in the country. So I think when it comes to illegal immigration, if you want to turn off the spigot, change this policy. I think it's a cheap way to award citizenship. You should not be a citizen simply because you were born here. You have to have some connection to the jurisdiction of the United States.
But you think that the Supreme Court will agree
I don't know.
to change
I think,
the Constitution?
I'm glad he's doing
it. The Constitution.
He's doing it through executive order. There's one case on this in 1898 1898, a Chinese immigrant who was here lawfully, and the court said he had a lawful connection to the country. They've never decided the question, can a child born of a legal immigrant, no connection to the country, do they automatically get birthright citizenship? That is an unanswered question. I think we'll know here pretty soon.
We will watch it very closely.
Yep.
Let's turn now to President Trump's decision to pardon, to give blanket pardons to everyone who was convicted of crimes on January 6th, including the 172 people who pleaded guilty to assaulting law enforcement officers. Even his own vice president said, quote, if you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. Do you believe that President Trump was wrong to issue these blanket pardons to the January 6th
Number one,
defendants?
he had the legal authority to do it, but I fear that you will get more violence. Pardoning the people who went into the Capitol and beat up a police officer violently, I think was a mistake, because it seems to suggest that's an okay thing to do. Kamala Harris wanted to raise bail money for people burning down Minneapolis. You know, Biden pardoned half his family going out the door. I think most Americans, if this continues, to see this as an abuse of the pardon power, that we'll revisit the pardon power of the president if this continues. But as to pardoning violent people who beat up cops, I think that's a mistake.
So you think it was a mistake by President Trump to issue these blanket pardons? What message does it convey to law enforcement? And if you conveyed that directly to Mr. Trump?
There's really been no better supporter of law enforcement in general. And there are a lot of people who supported President Trump and law enforcement didn't like this. But he said it during the campaign. He's not tricking people. You know, Biden promised not to pardon his family. He did. Trump said, I'm going to pardon these people. So the fact that he did it is no surprise. But I'll be consistent here. I don't like the idea of bailing people out of jail or pardoning people who burned down cities and beat up cops, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat.
Okay. Let me ask you about President Trump's decision to revoke security clearance from some of his, I should say, security protection from some of his former top aides, including Mike Pompeo, his former Secretary of State, his former National Security Advisor, John Bolton. Both of them have received.
Brian Hook.
Yeah, and they've received threats from Iran. What is your reaction, and do you think that President Trump should actually reverse course on that one?
Well, I told Senator Tom Cotton, who's the Intelligence Committee chair, and he got a briefing, and he told me, he asked a very good question to the briefers. If it was you and your family, would you want a protective detail? And they said yes. So it needs to be on an as-needed basis. You know, we don't get protection as former senators or congressmen. You know, the idea of giving protection to everybody makes no sense. But if there's a legitimate threat against people who served our government from a foreign adversary, I don't want to pull that protection. So I think what you'll see is the Senate particularly get a briefing about this and engage the White House to see if we can get some relief, because I fear it will chill out how people will serve in the future.
So you disagree with the decision to revoke their security protection, it sounds like.
President, if it's needed, I want to keep it. And it seems to me that the threat levels justify the continuation of the program, but I'll know more next week.
We know that John Bolton has been a critic of the president. Do you see this as political retribution?
You know, President Trump said something that's true. You can't get protection for all of your life. The question is, do you deserve protection because you served an administration, you stood up to a foreign adversary, and they want to kill you? I know this. They've been trying to assassinate President Trump. That's a fact. And I believe the threat streams may not be at that same level to Pompeo, Brian Hook, or Bolton. But the last thing we want to do in this country is tell somebody, come into our government, you know, come up with policies to stand up to rogue nations like Iran. They come after you, pull the rug on you. We don't need to do that.
All right, couple more, and we're almost out of time. Tulsi Gabbard, of course, is going to have her confirmation hearing this week for Director of National Intelligence. Some of your Republican colleagues still have a number of questions for her about meeting with Syria's dictator Bashar al-Assad, about supporting Edward Snowden, who, of course, leaked state secrets. Do you trust Tulsi Gabbard with the nation's most closely held secret, Senator?
I tend to vote for almost everybody at both parties, but I want to see how the hearing goes. Why did you go to Syria? What did you do regarding Assad? Why do you think Edward Snowden should be held as a hero? I certainly don't. We'll see how the hearing goes. But in her favor, Richard Burr is going to introduce her, and he's one of my dearest friends, so we'll see.
Senator, can you say right now, are you a yes on Tulsi Gabbard?
I'm going to see how the hearing goes. I'm inclined to be yes on everybody, but there's some questions she will be asked that I want to hear the answers to.
So you're a we'll see, not a yes?
We'll see.
Okay. Let me ask you finally, on Friday night, President Trump removed, as you know, 18 independent inspectors general. Just for folks so they know what that means, these are watchdogs in key departments, from defense to the State Department, Veterans Affairs. What do you say to those who believe that President Trump is going to replace these watchdogs with loyalists?
You know, I'm not overly worried about that. It's not the first time people have come in and put their team in place. When you win an election, you need people in your administration that reflect your views. So I'm not really worried about that. This other stuff, you know, the security detail, that bothers me because it sends a signal to future service. Tulsi Gabbard, I'm inclined to vote for everybody, but I want to hear her thinking about Assad and Snowden, and we'll see.
But very quickly, the law says he's supposed to give you 30 days notice. He didn't do that. Do you think he violated the law?
Well, technically, yeah, but he has the authority to do it. So I'm not, you know, losing a whole lot of sleep that he wants to change the personnel out. I just want to make sure that he gets off to a good start. I think he has. I'm very supportive of what he wants to do to America. I want to give his team more money for the border. And let me just end on this to my House Republican colleagues in the House and the Senate. If we don't give Tom Homan more resources, all the things we promised we would do during the campaign are going to fall flat. Without money, he can't do what he promised to do.
All right. Senator Lindsey Graham, please come back and join us again soon. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.